The UNHRC itself is seemingly a biased organization, no doubt about it. In fact, under its previous chief, Michelle Bachelet, there were repeated reports that were brought out under her stewardship questioning what is happening in Kashmir. India, in fact, had responded to that, saying that the reports that have come out are fallacious, tendentious, and motivated, and that individual countries are trying to influence, and individuals are trying to influence the role of the UNHRC. Will the fact that Kashmiri pundits today spoke and exposed Pakistan and its nefarious activities have any ramifications beyond the four walls of the UNHRC?
Zaka, I don't know what ramifications it will have if the conscience of the world was not shaken when over 500,000 Kashmiri pundits were forcibly evicted from the Kashmir Valley by the terrorists out there. Then I don't know whether the testimonies of the victims in the halls of Geneva will actually shake the conscience of these countries. Number two, please look at some of the countries which are members of the UNHRC. China, right? You have countries like Iran. You have countries like Pakistan. I could name an entire rogues gallery of countries which are members of the UNHRC. So to expect that these guys are going to actually, their conscience is going to be shaken, and that UNHRC is actually in the business of protecting human rights of people in various parts of the world, well, that's a figment of imagination of, whoever thinks that.
Okay.
Number three, I think what is important, even though I don't think much is going to come out of it, but I think it is very important that until now, for almost 40 years, there has been this kind of toing and froing at the Geneva UNHRC. But I think this is among the first time, not only in Geneva, but even in the UN, in New York, you had a victim of terrorism, Mr. Karambir Kang,
Correct,
who lost his entire family in the 26/11 attacks. He spoke out there. And it is very good that, we show to the world the victims of terrorism rather than, these human rights entrepreneurs who are going out there and, trying to get funding and doing all kinds of shady activity. I think it is very important to at least put on record the testimony of the victims of terror. So to that extent, I think this is a very useful exercise, and it needs to be done much more. Not just last point, Zaka, not just of the Kashmiri pundits. And I think we need to be extremely careful on this, because in Kashmir, it is not just the Kashmiri pundits. They've, of course, faced the brunt of it. But the Kashmiri Muslims have also, their human rights have also been violated by these terrorists. They have also been butchered in Kashmir. And I think it is very important that their stories also be put out there.
All right. When the last report came out about the situation in Kashmir, this was in July of 2019, just a few months after, just ahead of the scrapping of Article 370. This is how the MEA had responded to it. This undermines the credibility of a UN institution. The MEA called the report overtly prejudiced. It seeks to build a false narrative. The report violates India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. In fact, the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. Pakistan is an illegal and forcible occupation of a part of the Indian state through aggression. This is the MEA's official response. Let me ask Ambassador Trigunyat, as a former diplomat, various actors, various individuals use the platforms of the UNHRC for their own, limited and vested political interests, including organizations like the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Countries. What relevance will today's statements by the Kashmiri Pandit community at the UNHRC exposing Pakistan's double speak, what relevance will it have when members of the UNHRC include those whose human rights record are dubious, whether it's China, Iran, Pakistan, etc.?
Well, Zaka, that is absolutely a truth that as far as certain states are concerned. And the fact that a country like Pakistan, whose foreign policy is essentially based on cross-border terrorism against India, especially in Kashmir, and that has been going on for 4 decades at least. Every time, unfortunately, the reports that have been coming out have been for some kind of a violations of human rights by the forces. but nobody ever spoke of the kind of carnage, the kind of dislocation that happened, and irrespective of the community. Of course, the Pandits, Kashmiri Pandits, have a lot to talk about and a lot of problems that they have suffered over the years, but that nobody cares about it. There are reports, and the whole world knows that Pakistan is a haven of terrorism, haven of terrorists. As late as just last 2 weeks ago, when China put its technical hold against another big terrorist, so they have
Correct.
been so. So I think there is concern, but at the same time, as Shan said, it is important for these people to go and speak at least that there is the other side of the story. Terrorism itself is a violation of the human rights and is not justifiable under any means. And that's what India says, that the reports that have come out are essentially made and targeted the Indian state rather than the root cause of the problem from the other side of the border.
Let me ask Aarti Tikku, it was not just the fact that there were 300,000 Kashmiri Pandits who were forced to flee back in the 1990s, but there are 70,000 of them who are officially registered as migrants in various parts of India who are hoping to go back to their homeland. But what about the situation today? Over the last 1 year or so, we have seen whether it is a Rahul Bhatt or a Rajni Bala or a Makhanlal Bindru, how safe are the Kashmiri Pandits, even the ones who are going back to the valley over the last year and a half or so? Because there is a feeling in the Pandit community, and I'll ask Lalit also this in a moment, that they are somehow, quote-unquote, sitting ducks for these terrorists who are still operational, both in Kashmir and from across the border.
Well, Zaka, to begin with, we must acknowledge the fact that the situation that Kashmir saw in 89-90, we have come far from that situation in the last 32 years. I do not think that it's the same kind of chaotic, unstable Kashmir that we experienced 32 years ago. Having said that, I do also acknowledge that a certain amount of conflict entrepreneurship, a certain section which indulged in the conflict entrepreneurship in the last 32 years, it is still active there. It has not been dismantled. The government has done tremendous work in the last few years, starting with the banning of Jamaat-e-Islami Kashmir and banning of Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front. Also, cracking down on the terror funding in the last few years. And then, of course, the landmark decision that the government took in 2019 on August 5th by revoking Article 370 and nullifying 35A as well. I think all these measures have made a lot of difference. But at the same time, if you do not clean the entire slate on which Islamic terrorism was founded, or in fact was allowed to function for the last 3 decades, unless and until you dismantle that completely, clean it up, we will see targeted killings of Kashmiri Hindus in Kashmir. That's what we've been seeing in the last few years.
Okay.
But I am not pessimistic. I do not think that the road for the return of Kashmiri Pandits and rehabilitation of Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir has ended. I think that road is open, and it will open up more as the government pursues and is persistent in its efforts to dismantle the terror network, which is not only prevalent in Kashmir,